This is Shirley with Spirit of Matter. Here, broadcasting from an old house um, that actually looks like it's kind of abandoned. And we'll see how that plays into the topic for today. So, I was just looking at this place and it seems pretty nice. I don't know how it's tied up contractually. Um, but that is a small place with a yard. Anyway, this is Soul Night, and I'm going to invite Apollo for our conversation and the qualities of Apollo, okay, to remove tyranny and to find a creative way of expression being seen, received well. And our ascendant is 22 degrees Aries, and we have 22 degrees Sun trine in it, so ascendant conjunct Chiron, both on the degree of assassination and murder. So this is odd to the 22, and since ascendant is close to Andromeda, I'm going to invite Andromeda to bring reconciliation and release of people from torture, from kidnapping, from assassination threats, and to reconcile. Today I discovered that my little experimentation regarding this was not working fully, and the fact was that you really needed to tend to if you tend to political assassination prevention, you have to tend to abolishing the practice of expandable children. And that's just life. It's not something I didn't guess. And we probably wouldn't want it to work otherwise, because that would mean that you would put children in danger because the politicians and the people are still being extorted. So that was a bit that didn't work. But I report also where it was not working for me, because it's about tending to it. And sometimes when you tend to things, not everything works as planned, okay? And that's okay. So now, let's continue on. We have the moon in Sag, and the midheaven is ruled by Saturn, and the moon is squaring Saturn. We right now have the conjunction with Mars and Jupiter, which is indeed kind of a new beginning for something, and Mars is already crossed Jupiter by the minute, with the moon just leaving, okay, the opposition to this. So we are beginning a new cycle with Mars Jupiter. We'll see where it goes. And the hour of moon, the moon is ruled by just Jupiter. And moon is also, and Jupiter ruling, yes, Saturn. Mercury retrograde. So it is good to talk about things I've already talked about. And you saw the topic for this is Pluto and Saturn aspects in synastry and also composite. How is this related to something I've already talked about? I'd like to but to bring back in time, I think a year back, maybe even 2 years back, when I was looking at the synastry of Peter R. de Vries and Corvin Out. And I was having a lot of fun making this episode. I knew nothing about expandable children. I knew nothing of what I know today. But I was seeing clearly that there is a hard aspect between Saturn and Pluto in both of the charts. And that was a Saturn return for both of them. Yes, Saturn return, I think, or Saturn maturation can also be. I don't remember. That was triggered there. And basically for the story, so those who do not know, one person was in charge of putting in jail the other person, and in court, the criminal, in this situation, the Corvanaut, um, is basically eyeing the reporter, Peter Adefries, that whose report helps to put him there, um, and, and basically they start a friendship. Okay, know that his son is talking about this now, or talked about this. I don't know if he has something in English. So the son name is Royce de Vries, for those who are interested. And so this is something I talked about before with Mercury retrograde. It's okay to talk about this again. And that brings me to the Saturn and the Pluto aspects in synastry and composite. Okay, the Corvanaut includes amiable aspects with this Uranus in good relation to the moon. It's radical acceptance. And now I'm going to focus on the Saturn part. On the Saturn and, oh no, yes, spilled my coffee. This is so funny because I played with my hair and I got a cup of coffee and I just spilled my coffee. It was so funny. My God, this is just so funny. Look what Mercury's doing. Oh my God. And now my phone is wet. Oh, yeah. Anyway, no, 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 no. It's not bad because now I have a video of this area. This is, I'll just let it be. Anyway, so Saturn and Pluto aspects. Let's talk about what does it mean to have them together in contact. Saturn is structure. Saturn is fear. Saturn is witchcraft. Saturn is time. Saturn is death. Saturn is Satan, right? Lord of Karma. Your hair, your ancestors. God, no. David Boy, right. Yes. Thanks God I don't have like a, I don't know, showing up. So you gotta look at the guide, which is okay. Thank you. Whatever. And I'll just let it be. And so Pluto is about power, hidden power, deep psychological transformation, the birthing of something, also the disintegration, the decay, which is it has in common with Saturn, but with Pluto. It's not just disintegration and decay, but something else is born. Okay, it's kind of like the phoenix from the flame, or the birthing of something, recycling, compost, excretion. Yes, our bum hole is actually not Uranus, but Scorpio and Pluto, and that's something for new astrologers. Yes, so this is something to remember. What's more, I can tell you. Yes, I hope that this is working for me. Yeah. What's more, I can tell you. I'm not even sure. Yes, because the screen is here, and I'm supposed to have my picture here. Wow, this marker is doing stuff. Anyway, let's just let it roll. The meeting between Saturn and Pluto is intense. It is about changing your structure, could be for even your cellular structure, from the core. It is a change from Yesod, for those of you who are working with the spheres, okay? A change from Yesod, a change from the core. And you will run into these aspects when it is time to change something from the core for you, okay? For example, how I knew about the Corvanaut was when I was in academia. Basically, I had a Corvanaut with one of the people I was TA of, and that was time for me to change for the core, because I had my studies, my housing, my work, my friends, everything was all related to academia and very, very centralized. And it was time for me to decentralize, and I had to change things from the core. Okay, not necessarily the way the other person wanted me to change things, but there was a calling, and for the other person, they were, I know today, was intelligence, and they were, yes, in the cult, and many other things that they really had to, and I think they're still dealing with that today. They had to change from the core in themselves. And so you see these two people meet and form a conjoining of Saturn and Pluto, which really changes the structure of the life. Okay, so Saturn Pluto, whether harmonious or hard aspect, is going to bring out the necessity to change something from the core. Okay, how do these two meet is going to affect the way you feel about the change. Because if these two meet harmoniously, okay, um, it is still a very strict combination, but you're eagerly walking into this change. Okay, I'll give you an example of when, let's say, this month I said I got my budget right. I paid for my bills, and then I paid for what things that I wanted to have in my life, and then no more budget for food. Get along with what you managed to get. Okay, this is an example of how I eagerly got into situation, this very harsh condition, but it's like, hey, they are going to take away cash. It's a way for me to learn about this situation. I put myself on the line here, and it's not about learning to make money, it's about learning to get what I need to get the food without being dependent on whether I have credit, whether I don't have credit, for this, for that. Okay, what are the sources for me to get food outside of the government? Okay, this is still example for harmonious change. I want to see change happening from the core, because no longer to be dependent on certain structures that do not yield me good life, including work, because I won't see the money. It's not going to support my needs, right? Something else has to be. But this is still harmonious aspects. This is still where you do something that puts you in a place that is of restriction, Saturn. But in order to transform your structure, it can also be where you begin to align your spine. You begin to align your spine. You begin to align for your bone structure. Okay? You take a good swim. Even those simple things. Okay? Now, when they meet in a hard aspect, you're not entering this change from the core. It's change from the core, but you're not entering that willingly, consensually. Okay? There's a difference. You can do, same thing could happen, okay? Same thing could happen that, let's say, for this month, some unexpected thing happened that you must fix now, and then no money for food. That would be something from the outside bringing that change to me, which would be accepted completely differently. Whereas where you enter a change and you say, you know what, I am going to buy what I need, and I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to buy low quality, which would anyway be spending money that I would need to spend again and more expensive. And I'm going to see, because I'm supposed to have enough for my needs. I'm going to make this decision, and then I'm going to deal with this decision. Because I want to change, and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. Okay? completely different to, oh, that thing happened, now I have no money for food. Now I need to get along, okay? And also your interpretations are different. If I put myself in situation, I'm sovereign, I did it, I know my intention, I know where I'm heading. If something from outside, is somebody cursing me? Is somebody trying to put me in places I don't want to be? Is somebody trying to divert me from my life direction? Okay, then you begin to also have a different interpretation. Okay, am I supposed to believe this is happening in my favor? But I'm supposed to have food, I'm supposed to have, because it's a very basic Saturn, right? And so this is where it's very, very challenging to have this in hard aspects. A hard aspect is not just the square and the opposition, it's also for the conjunction. And I'm going to begin with them, and let's talk about the conjunction. If you look in Liz Green's composite in astro.com, then you would see she interprets the conjunction between Pluto and Saturn as, for these two people, they may survive during like the a depression, okay? Not depression as ailment, but the depression as the time where there was a financial crisis, as called the Great Depression. And so this is, they have limited resources, but they persevere, okay? If you look to astroseek.com, okay, then you would see how these two may work together very intensely to change something, structure in society, right? But the problem can arise of power place where they decide who is responsible for what, because responsibility is Saturn, okay? Essentially, and I've had the honor to experience that in energy, the first thing I felt was a line into my spine. Again, someone was standing to my spine, and receiving a lot of information about like ancestors and my teeth and so on. But then there was also psychological play that again was bringing the theme of Alice in Wonderland. It was with an energy that maybe monarch, okay, what can I say? I'm astrologer, I feel energies, weird shit happens. And so that was the beginning of like a psychological, a very intense psychological issue. And the immediately there was tending to structure. Okay, the very first encounter interaction had to do with structure of juristic system, internationally, and so on and so forth. Papers, documents, okay, bringing Hans Medema back to Netherlands, and so on and so forth. And so Saturn also rules paperwork, bureaucracy, and the 2030 agenda, the globalist world order, Saturn agenda. Okay, so immediately all of these things came about, and this is a part of the theme of transforming Pluto structure Saturn, and I have Saturn in the 9th house, so this would be global issue, okay? Ruled by the ruler of my 4th, so global issue starting at the key point where my fatherland is. And so, and of course Saturn also rules the father. Yes, and I'm not going to elaborate on that. But definitely it's a very, and the first thing I felt was intensity was so powerful that I had to a very Plutonian person like myself, with Pluto 0 degrees Scorpio, ruled by the Mars that rules literally nearly all of my chart, but Venus is basically standing there and wondering, oh my gosh, this is so intense even for me that I have to like take a break from that energy. Okay, not only because like power plays and so, but even if it wasn't power plays, there's something just so intense that I have to take a break from the energy. And so I've realized that there is, if let's say the harder aspects of the opposition or the square, they are more about two sides, being in two sides and having friction with one another. Here, there is a blending of energies. And with the conjunction, the blending of energy of the outer planet and the inner planet is you are blending in with something that is intergenerational. Okay? For example, whoever plays, let's say, the Pluto person, is not the Pluto person. It's the cult. It's the, or for some people, a patriarchy. It's the this, it's the that. Now, the Saturn person is bringing karma. Okay, for that energy, and know for they are in Saturn maturation time in their lives. Okay, and so this is a Saturn thing, right? And so for the Saturn person, what they bring to the Pluto person is basically karma. Okay, what you've been. And depending on where it is, okay, this could be beliefs, it could be actions, it could be many things. And Pluto is where we swipe things under the rug, or we're not even conscious of that, okay? And so for Saturn, it brings an incarnation, a restriction, okay? You want to be cautious with that, because on physical level there can be restriction to the excretion process. So you want to make sure that that's not like where you're heading. But there can be certain incarnation, certain restriction, a certain karma. Okay, where have you been going all this far with your Pluto? Now you're being met with this Saturn person, and they bring in their own fears, their own structure, their own thing that at the very least restrict you, but also points to how you've been using power in your life. Are you using your power correctly? Okay, this is the biggest issue, okay? Because especially if you are around Saturn, Saturn's going to trigger this, but I'm in my Pluto square, and so with my Saturn that's already mature, my role is, how do you use your power? Before you get to the Pluto square and everything falls apart, including yourself and your life, which can feel like the Saturn transit, how do you use your power? And Saturn is a bit of an incarnation test, okay? How have you been using your power so far? So to get this, I think you would need a Pluto-Saturn aspect to begin with, okay? If you have even the sextile or the trine. And then a Saturn maturation can bring a person that have these aspects, like, hey, how do you use your power? And also reminding you, if you're going to do things in a way that brings good results, karma, you're going to gain power. And so this is where the Saturn-Pluto, the Saturn person can be very beneficial to the Pluto person, because if the Pluto person is tending to that Saturn, to what is needed, okay? If Saturn represents what you need to do, and if the Pluto person tends to what is needed, okay, and goes deep into the rabbit hole of its own self. Okay, let's say you're a monarch. Okay, do you have memories? Maybe you don't even have memories of things that you did, of things that happened, of things that did. It's a very deep rabbit hole. It's very intense, and this is Saturn. Okay, it's not Venus. With Venus there is eroticism, there is this. With Saturn it's like, no, I cannot be erotic with you until I am safe. Okay, and and so you don't even get that to accompany you along the way, because this is and this is making it a bit depressive. You understand? This is why it's called it for or the conjunction of the Great Depression, and it can also limit the resources. But you have to understand both people deal with that in their life for a reason, for the natal charts. Yes, I'm not saying stay with that person, but they both deal with that for a reason, for the natal chart. And so for the but if you do okay, pass the test of Saturn, not of the Saturn person, but of Saturn, okay, then you get more power. You incarnate your power into the world. You rejuvenate, you execrete trauma, and now you have magnetic power that is for yours to keep. Okay, you pass the incarnation test and you get good power. This would usher, if you're before your Pluto transit, this would usher you to the Pluto square transit in a very benefic way. I can say that I'm in my Pluto square, and yes, there are things that are coming up, but I can see how I can see the wealth of tending to Pluto and tending to Saturn has accumulated in my life, and the many blessings I receive within this. I'm not saying anyways easy, but I can absolutely see my blessings as well. So when you do that, if you're before your Pluto square and comes this Saturn person in your life, Saturn situation, Saturn return, then when you deal with that, you're going to have a lot of power that is going to be discovered when you go to your Pluto square. Okay, my Pluto square has been discovering the places that I have been so powerful that I had no idea. Okay, because I was afraid of everybody's Pluto, and I was like, oh, did you notice that your Pluto is squaring this person's Venus and this person's ascendant? Oh, that might be why they acted so creepy sometimes. Yes, you terrify the shit out of them. Okay, so so it's like, oh, it's good to be aware of that, because I had no idea. But if I didn't know this before, I would try to run away as fast as I can, which would not necessarily work in my favor. Now for the Pluto person, what does the Pluto person bring to the Saturn person? And it is transformation. Saturn can be your fears, Saturn can be your paperwork, Saturn can be getting yourself in order, getting yourself in check, Saturn can be align your spine, Saturn can be tend to your nails, to your hair, to your ancestors, to your teeth, okay? And Pluto brings completely rejuvenation. This is a maturation process, but it's not a maturation test so much as Pluto transforms you. They're going to bring something with their power. They're going to bring power to the table, okay? They're going to bring power to the table that requires you to grow into that power, which Saturn is very good at. And so it's important to note that that is combination where, again, if you have, let's say, a fear or something like that, Pluto is going to want you to dredge up. What are you afraid of in this situation? To be authentic, and to boundaries can be a thing here. Okay, to transform. How do your boundaries? Maybe you're going to become more powerful, so your boundaries are changing, because in the past you had a boundary here, a boundary there, and now for these boundaries might not be necessary, or you're going to put up different boundaries that you didn't put up before. Okay, because Saturn can also be that. This is transformation. You have to see how it's aspected, because that thing can be like the Mars Jupiter conjunction that in itself is happening right now. Well, it's squaring Saturn, um, but in essence, just this conjunction is intense enough. It's deeply psychological. So wherever you had fears or something like that, Pluto is going to dredge up your deepest, darkest fears to the surface, and it's not necessarily doing so to put you down. Is but you have, and again, you have to see what other aspects are. But it's not doing so. It's just this is Pluto work. It's like we're gonna compost this shit. We're gonna disintegrate that shit. Okay. Um, and so anything Saturn in your life can decompose and regenerate. And this may be because it's time. It's an aspect where you would need to look at things also financially. Think about the Great Depression, okay? Then it is a time where you go inwards and you grow inwards, where there are certain other type of growth limited. This is a person that can bring upon deep psychological transformation for you, especially if you have fears from that, um, and and dredge up everything within you, okay, by just being. And this is important. Yes, it may not be like your psychologist or anything like that, but it definitely brings up. And this is not because it's conjunction and you blend the energies. You think about these two people, okay, Lord of Karma and Lord of Transformation, walking like hand in hand, but with their hand intermixed and the energies intermixed, and then walking together. You could feel like even in energy, you can barely walk to another place without this energy being next to you. Okay, so this is a very intense encounter, and not only that, the Pluto still needs to learn how to use its power, and what it tends to do is to dredge up the fears of Saturn, and what Saturn tends to do is try to limit the power of Pluto, okay, over their lives. And so that is a blending of energies that is very, very intense. Um, what the good news is that you definitely get to dredge up everything and to deal with things from a whole new perspective. Okay, there are things I can say that if I would meet in 2017, it would be a horror show. But now it's kind of okay. I've been through that. That dredges up this and that and that and that and that. I understand the intergenerational context that I'm meeting here. I also understand other things that come by. I understand that this SRA thing is ruling the entire society, that many need to change. Okay, I understand the Pluto, and don't try to do everything with like on one person. Okay, and this is very important because Pluto is an outer planet. There is an intergenerational work at play. So whoever is the Pluto is kind of, I will give example from a teacher I had about sex positive sexuality. And she had a boyfriend back then. And she said, whenever I fight with my boyfriend, sometimes he looks at me and he says, please, woman, could you put the ancestral lineage of wounded women that were hurt by patriarchy for a second outside this corner? I feel the relation. Oh my God. Somebody nodding. Could you put it outside the room for a second and let's just have a conversation between you and I, okay? And that can feel like that with an outer planet, because the outer planet is like just as a person right now, but the issue that you have with them is with the issue with the entire, let's say, patriarchy or matriarchy or lineage or something. Like, can you speak with me as person? Yeah, but this issue is still coming up and it's making it difficult for me to deal with you as a person, and I also don't want to blame you personally for what your entire lineage is responsible for. Okay, and that is the thing. And so this is where the hard aspect is indeed hard. Okay, it's indeed difficult. um, Also the psychological and energy intensity, Saturn endures. Okay, you don't have a conversation over a cup of coffee, and maybe something comes up in a dream, and maybe then you think of something. No, this could be hours upon hours that you sit, you saw something, and then it's hours upon hours of excreting junk from and garbage from the soul, and processing and going through intense, almost shamanistic like experience, the type of thing that people go through once, twice in their lives, and they're like they're fixed. But with that encounter, it's like almost every time you meet, if not every time you meet or encounter or this, and it can be even social media, it can be a comment, it could be, okay, all of these things. So, and yet, make no mistake, Pluto is a point of attraction, okay? So, you could feel like, well, this person has pull on me, but I pull away, for this person has pull on me. But this, and this could be for both sides, because when the energy it blends, okay, now your energy is blended. And for the Pluto, they can be drawn too. Okay, they can be obsessed about the Saturn. They can be obsessed about transforming the Saturn person's fear or structure, or teeth. I don't know. They could be obsessed about doing that, and it's a very immediate. Okay, it's immediately. Okay. For example, look, I have it in the ninth house. I was like, oh, look at all these, Orthodox people. It's like, well, look at you, you're not at all Orthodox. Like, what are you doing here? And so on. If you need or you need a doctor, and so on and so forth. Well, I'm like, well, are you going to have a class losses again 2030? And so, so that is this kind of deep conversation, and the fears are stirred up, where Saturn is like, is it really your opinion, or are you paid to do the Pluto wealth? Okay, are you extorted to have this opinion, or is it really your opinion? And so forth. So yes, psychological counseling on a podcast, but this is exactly the type of interaction. It's very, very deep, and as anything, Pluto, you could not even have it in energy. Okay, it could either it doesn't even have to be that you are meeting and that you are this or that you are that. It can, or even if you are meeting this person, there is another type of connection going on there. Pluto is always the hidden. So you want to pay attention to that when you speak, because, and I go again to that example of where, for my teacher had her ex-boyfriend telling her, well, could you for 1 second put all the women that were hurt by patriarchy outside of the room? And this is listening to the hidden thing, because if you just listen to the words, you just listen to the words, but you have to read energy, okay? And with energy, you see that you could have a conversation with this person and something else going on in the energy. Then you have to balance the spirit and the matter of things, because there's like that was the thing that was said, and that was the energy. Here is a relationship teaching that is bad for this aspect. Oh my God, this I need to tell you. There is relationship teaching that goes like the camera. And you say, let's say you were two in the room. What was, some people are going to see it opposite. I'm going to tell my perspective. What was said Anything, if you would put a camera in the room, what would the camera show? And try to analyze what the conversation was through the lens of camera. It is very good for the type of relationships where people tend to overinterpret it in what the person said, and there really is no subtext, okay? Not Pluto. Don't try this with Pluto. It is important to understand there is subtext. It is important to understand there is energy. It is important to understand that the way that I perceive for this subtext and energy has place for interpretation in itself. But what you don't want to do is say, if a camera would be in the room, what would it see? Because Pluto hard aspects tend to produce a range of experiences from deep intimacy that you cannot express in words to gaslighting and mind control. Okay? And so you don't want to deny, in general, this is why, even when I talk about what people call psychosis, the cure is for housing first, independent of ability to orgasm, was practiced in Finland, and to believe that this person is speaking the truth. They've perceived something, so you don't want to disown of what a person perceived, but you also don't want to end up telling each other what they feel and what they think. Okay, you want to address this, and and to be safe in this connection, you also want to take into account that there can be a certain structure of the psychology. Okay, Saturn structure, Pluto psychology, structure of hidden energy. Saturn is also witchcraft, so there can be something going on here that can be unintentional, but can also be other things, and you want to hold a place for the entirety. Okay, for example, the Great Depression, it was also an occult phenomena and not just a financial event. Yes, so you have to understand this, because otherwise you cannot deal with the unit of analysis if you only deal with spirit, if you only deal with matter, and if you either make assumptions or not allow for something hidden to arise. So this is for the hard aspect, and this is really when they two blend. Now you're gonna have to understand that there are composite and synastry and natal chart. How is Saturn and Pluto in your natal chart? Okay, it's gonna help you understand a lot. If you have a mixture, usually you will have mixture of hard aspect and harmonious aspect. You're gonna tap into the harmonious aspect. And now I'm going to talk about the sextile Saturn, sextile Pluto. Okay, and this is an aspect that after you hear about the conjunction, you say, oh my god, I love this aspect. Who do I have this aspect with? Yes. Usually someone you're going to have another hard aspect with, but this is where the same big giants meet in a way that is a bit more harmonious. The change is still a change from the core. Saturn touching Pluto. First of all, what has Pluto been changing in Capricorn and now in Aquarius? Okay, the core of the pyramid. Everything. New World Order. Okay, so many, with the reset, with this and that. Everything from credit to religion to bonds and stocks to every single thing it touches from the core. And it's the structures of our society, of our politics, of our religions, of our psychology. We're not going to do psychology the same way we did. You think about housing first and open dialogue. Okay, if either you know about housing first and open dialogue and you understand that this is what you need to demand, or you're going to go pyramidal or extra pyramidal, or you're going to put a chip in the brain and all these things that, and speaking as a person who heard of chaos theory and said, oh, we must do a chip like in the brain and then it will align the brain waves and so on and so. That's not how they use it. It's not what they use it for. It could do that. It's not what they do with that. And where it doesn't work, the bugs here are people getting in and out of hospitals and cannot even take this thing out of the body. So I saw that this thing doesn't work, and now everybody's like, Neuralink, maybe it will help me with my this, with my that, and totally understand the stage where people don't want to hear because they're so wishing for to try something. Yes, and this is a situation. It can do great things if you do it for great things, but this is not why psychiatrists practice today, and everybody gets the result of that. It's practice to silence you when you pay attention to how violence works, so you wouldn't see what's coming. So that's that. Now for the sextile, it is still changed from the core. You're still touching the structures of your lives, okay? In the synastry, again, with the Saturn person, is changed to the structure of the lives. For the Pluto person, is given structure to their transformative abilities. For example, you could get acknowledged with the power that you hold over another person, and the Saturn gives you a structure of how to do this, okay? If you are, let's say, the Pluto person, yes, then running into a Saturn person is going to bring in a certain dynamic where you say, I want to transform this. And then the Saturn is like, okay, what are the next steps to do that? This is a very good idea. I'm very happy that you want to do this. Must be transformed. But what are the steps for to do that? Is this step correct? Is this correct? Is this correct? And Saturn can take you even to the depths of what you're trying to transform and bring in a deeper structure, deeper layer, a deeper this, a deeper that, that eventually empowers you, and yet that is, yes, this is Saturn, okay, it's not Venus. So Saturn is like, oh, we need to do that, and that. And for you, the Pluto's like, oh, I'm so eager to change that. I don't mind you just saying that like that, okay? Saturn is not seducing you to change anything. It's like, okay, that needs to be done, that needs to be done, that needs to be done, that needs to be done. But with Pluto, you have less resistance, as can be, for example, even in the conjunction, this in that sense. Although with Pluto, you want to change the other person so much that you're like, let's see how I transform you. You came here to test me, let's see how I transform you. And it's a lovely dynamic when it's in the harmonious aspect. And this extends to the sextile, okay? There is a dynamic between people. You think about Saturn even as the teacher or the judge, and this Saturn says, well, this needs to be done so, and so. And then Pluto is like, well, how about we transform the way changes are done? Like, okay, that sounds interesting. Let's hear what you have to say. And this is a conversation between the two that in the conjunction is kind of, okay? It's kind of, Pluto's like, I'm going to change your structure. And then Saturn's like, I'm going to bring karma to those ways that you and your entire generation and lineage have been changing people's structures and so on. Okay, but it's also the other aspect that are loving, and now Pluto is sextiling Neptune, so that would bring, with the conjunction, bring Saturn sextile Neptune. So Saturn is like, yes, you're overbearing and you're this and you're that and you're that, but you're also kind of like, you are spiritual, so let's see how we can work with that and maybe create some good dream together. Yes, and so And then Pluto might be tempted to, instead of like, no, you are overbearing, to you are this, you are that, it was like, okay, let's go into that dream and bring in some structure, because I have been dreaming that dream with you, and you can actually help me here, do this, do that, do that, do that for me. To which Saturn says, well, hold on a second, I'm not your employee, and so on. With the sextile, we have a conversation here. That both parties are willing to have change. Now, with the Pluto person, Pluto is the execution part. So what Saturn says, okay, we need to do, we're gonna need to remove in the next 10 years, we're going to need to remove that, and that, and then Pluto is like, okay, let's remove that. Poof, and Saturn's like, what did you do? Well, you said we're gonna have to remove. I said in the next decade. And Pluto's like, well, we're gonna have to do that, so why not now? Okay, Saturn's like, because that's freaking overwhelming. Okay, now that you've said that authentically, that you're overpowered by me, I'm going to try and tone down a bit for you. Okay, and so Pluto is still bringing these deep transformations, just that you're eager to get into it, and then Pluto's like, oh, you're eager to get into it, okay, let's get into it all the way in. And Saturn is like, that takes time. And here is where Pluto learns how to time its change so that it doesn't take too slow, so that there's no change, so there's stagnation, but it's also learning the tending to things. That's just so powerful, because you can transform something one thing at a time, and then your transformation is enduring. Okay, and when there's nothing more than Pluto likes, then let's make it all the way to the core, for which we are going to go step by step, by climbing the mountains and then shifting the entire mountains from the entire mountain from within. And Pluto's like, I love that. Let's do it. Okay, so and yet is the eroticism here comes from Pluto. Okay, the eroticism comes from let's nuke this thing. Okay, building do we need to explode? Okay, explosion is more Uranus, but here is, or implode. Okay, this is what is collapsing into its own thing. And then Saturn said, well, there is, I don't know, the interest, the bigger interest structures, like, give me a building. Give me a building. Well, it's a couple of buildings, even better, even better. That's a system of structures. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Let's nuke them. Okay, and Saturn is like, okay, well, that's gonna take time. Well, give me steps. What I want. Okay, how do I get to do that? And the other thing that Pluto can do is kind of like when Saturn says, well, you know, we have a problem with this and that bank that they're practicing satanic ritual abuse, and Pluto's like, no problem. The next day you see 70, 80 million branches of this bank exploded, and no banking system. And Saturn's like, have you heard about it? Yes, did you like it? What will you do? You said that we have problems with this bank, so we took it off. And so that's the dynamic. Okay, it's lovely, it's still quite creepy. and that's what you want to tap into. Now, I have to take into account that we're still in the age of Saturn, of Neptune and Pluto sextile. That might mean that your Saturn, the sextile Pluto, might either conjunct Neptune, which means that Saturn is like, oh, there's a really important karma to bring her, I'm just not sure what it is. And and then you'd have to, well, let's transform everything from the core and see and find out, and and that's a good idea. So, or from the other Saturn, you would from the other aspect of sextile, you would get it to a square Neptune. Okay, in which case you have another problem with another hard aspect with Neptune. So, if for the conjunction you are sextile in Neptune, which is good, at least you can dream together. Hopefully, it's not like Alice in Wonderland. Or maybe we transform the programming, which is another, is to transform it instead of torturing people and this and that to something that's actually benefic for people, for humanity. Using the power of storytelling and so on. Yes. Anyway, but with the square, then you could be doing well with Pluto. It's just that there's a problem with the dream. What is gebruikt? It's broken. Okay? And so by the transformation that you're doing with this Pluto and everything's so harmoniously working together, and like the conjunction, okay, where the harmony is a bit, yes, it's a bit, yeah. But at least the dream is working well. With the square, so you have a good sextile with Pluto, and with the square or even the conjunction, it's kind of like, well, you know, let's say you exploded all these banks and so on and so forth. It's like, yes, but you exploded also a lot of homeless people with these banks. Now we have to fix that. It's like, oh, I didn't see that there were. Why would there be homeless people next to me? Well, they did just sleep there, and then that was the building, and you exploded the building with all these homeless people. And so, and that's the fog, okay? That's the Neptune. I'm going to save these people. It's like, well, you've exploded them. Well, they don't suffer now. Well, unfortunately, they weren't arranged that was not an easy death. So that is something that people that like imploding or exploding things need to take into consideration. Then we have Pluto square the Corvanaut, okay, Pluto square Saturn, but I dare say that the Pluto conjunct Saturn is a bit of a Corvanaut. Now that I think about it, it's intergenerational Corvanaut. So sometimes Corvanaut is a woman or a man, and so that is. I won't say that. I'll get energy troubles if I do. So yeah, this is where two people from other sides of the wall, let's say, meet, and there is a power struggle that's triggered there. And that is a crisis. Okay, it's like, think about, well, how about we try to prevent political assassination of public figures? Yes, but they're all tied up in Peter rings. Okay. So how do we tend to this issue? Well, their job is pretty much to make sure it would be as difficult for you to do so, because they're funded by the banks, and their job is to get these banks to be Switzerland. And by the way, do a world war. Okay. But you don't. Okay, there is an interaction there that is of crisis sort. Okay. And it's like, well, yeah, but if they do that, they will be expanded. Is to think about the ESA and the SS. Okay, yeah, it was an ESA, then they did the job, then came the SS and killed the ESA, and then came World War and SS was killed. Like, it doesn't have a duration. like the structure is not good for you, basically. It's like, yeah, but within the not good, I got to the point where it's the best point in the structure that it's not good, but the best point in the not good structure, or the lesser evil. And this is exactly the Corvan out. Okay, this is exactly where there is tremendous change to behold, and it's a crisis. And this is where, okay, if I take a look at what happened to me in academia, then there was this kind of Me Too like thingy, but I noticed that the problem was mind control and all these things. But I also noticed that the person is not doing that because he's evil, but because he's stressed as fuck. And I didn't, and that was his stress. And I had no idea. And only now when I begin to understand that that was intelligence, so he could not go to therapist because they can only go to the therapist from the intelligence. And the therapist from the intelligence makes sure you won't speak. But but the whole problem that he's been like that because he was so lonely and isolated, even within the many people around him, that he could not genuinely speak, only in energy. And so, and then I went to therapy, and my therapy was Monarch. So with this Alice in Wonderland, that shared dreams of Alice in Wonderland. And me and my bestie were like, this is so funny. This is so not understanding what the fuck is going on and that we should run, not hide. So, and that was, and then I noticed that in the starting to show me MK Ultra and satanic ritual abuse, and this is as I won't say it to him because it's and that's the highway to to being called cuckoo, and so on. And then it's two people don't really have means of support. Okay, with all the people around me, all the people, none of them could really understand what is going on, and I couldn't really speak because it's energy. They don't know what's energy. That's just another. And so for the situation was that usually you would tell a person go seek help, but there isn't. And then for my psychologist, it's like kind of, you ruined everything. You're not safe here, you're not safe there, and kind of like threatening my life and so on. And I'm like, okay, they don't really have help either. We have to. Nobody can talk with anybody, and so nobody recovers from anything until people are supposed to self-destruct. And it was through satire, it was through flying bombardier that a lot of the stress was excreted. And then I was introduced to another chart with a Corvan out. So, so this is crisis, okay? This is where situation is so that you may not have the resources you need. Okay, and unlike the sextile where you enter this situation willingly to transform structure from the core, here is like necessity comes in. Okay, and eventually what happened in academia, what I believe happened because it was intelligence, and I was kind of like, I didn't know what the people, and I was always listening, and that, and so on, and it was feminine, and so on, and that person probably thought that I'm going to extort them, and they cannot get information out of me because I see something is off and I don't speak. And they listen, and they keep talking about their friend, basically the who knows if not handler that was accused and found guilty in sexual harassment, and I'm bombarded with triggers and I stay silent for a year, and then everything came out of me. So they probably thought that I'm going to extort them with the way things happen, and I was saying that there's something's off, they're trying to extort me or to put me in places where I don't want to be. So that was very likely what happened there. And so this is, yes, very, very peculiar, but flying bombardier would come out of it, and then afraid that there were some homages to my Saturn 7th of October. That's what I know. I cannot tell more because I don't know more. And this is the crisis, okay? This is a hard aspect par excellence that brings in tremendous amount of stress and pressure and friction, and it's downright scary, okay? And again, you would be exposed to that. Also, when you know. Before I met that person, I felt I was in my first degree, end of first degree, and there was something where I saw this person towards the second degree, I think, and it was like an before earthquake that one pallet of the earth goes underneath for the other pallet. Okay, and I saw like a vision of that before this, and for the second time I heard what was called look at the chart, and I said, and I was hearing after as you say goodbye, there is a new hello. I didn't know what goodbye, but I understood what was the hello. And when I saw the chart, I saw the person like, oh my God, I'm having a Corvan out. And I didn't even find it in the synastry, because the synastry, it was the sextile, then the composite, square everything. Pluto square Venus, Pluto square Mercury, Pluto square Saturn. It's like it's all over the place, and there's even a tiny orb for like the Saturn, for like the Mars. I was like, well, at least the personal planets are doing okay. It's kind of like Sun trine Mars and so on, Mercury trine Mars and so on. But the outer planets in the composite are in the synastry good, the composite. I said this is a world war. Oh, and we met in a world war. That's great. So, who knows what is this about? Hello. Yes. Oh, am I bothering you? No, it's okay. I leave. אני גרה, סורי. אני גרה כאן, אני פשוט מקליטה פודקאסט. הכל בסדר?
הכל בסדר איתך?
כן, כן, כן.
הבנתי. מה השם שלך?
שירלי, נעים מאוד.
שירלי, יאללה. איפה את גרה, שירלי?
I cannot say because it's online. Okay?
את זוכרת מספר תעודת זהות?
I don't say it, it's online. So, yes.
You were alone? Just you were?
Yeah, just me. I was just going to record a podcast and then I leave. Oh, is that a problem?
No, not a problem.
I make noise for people? Is that a problem? Oh, okay. No, so I will just go to my porch. Yes. So, anyway, here we are talking about the square. There's the police coming. Because somebody saw me on that property, which I didn't know if that was a problem. It's not the first time I record here. Anyway, yeah. Talking about the Saturn square Pluto. Oh, wait, I will have to. Okay, so that was interesting. Apparently I made no offense. They just wanted to know that I'm okay. And I can record. And I can go back to recording. So this was fascinating. And I think we pretty much got the square. Okay? I think we pretty much got the square. It's intense. It is... and you want to make sure you can tap into the trine or the sextile with this one. Usually you would have it in either the natal chart or the synastry. And Or you would need another person that, or talisman that taps into the trine or the sextile energy. Okay, this is necessary. This is necessary. It's not, and there is always going to be a transit that's activating for it. Now, I'm right now in the Pluto square. Okay, back in academia was the Saturn maturation. Yes, I'm sorry, it was a Saturn return, and then the Saturn maturation. Okay, and the Saturn square Saturn. Then I ran into for the Corvan out. So you will see that, and this is also important. Okay, both sides of the Corvan out need to have the somebody that brings in the trine, that brings in the sextile, because there is where you're going to get support. It's the situation where now is change happened, that is crisis, but from the sextile and the trine you're going to say, yes, but I need that, yes, but I need to change, yes, but I need this. And it's from those harmonious aspects that you get the support that you need, because both of you are going to need support, and you're not going to have this in established structures. And this is what I think other astrologers won't tell you, because astrologers look at Pluto and say, go see a therapist. Well, in the structure of the square, like what happened with me, my therapist was Monarch, was MK Ultra. Okay, that was the thing, that I went to the therapist and the therapist was MK Ultra. And this is, and for the other person, yes, who could not go to therapist, because the therapist would be same with intelligence. Yes, so, and this is why they was not afraid for like, oh, sexual harassment or this or that, they thought I wanted the money. I said, no, I want change. And change, fear them like death. And then I talk about near-death experiences and so on. Who knows what's going to happen in the world from that conversation. But anyway, what I wanted to say about this is basically that you're not going to find the change that you want and through the established structure. But if you have the trine and the sextile, now you begin to have alternate ways, okay, for to change the structure. In academia, I simply became astrologer. And again, I will not say the name of the person. When I checked for asteroids, the name of the person is right conjunct to my Uranus and my Cassandra. No, Cassandra is with Ketu, but conjuncting my Uranus in my 10th house. So the only way out was not psychology, but astrology, without disregarding psychology. You came also to change for the structure of psychology. Okay? And there were a lot of fear, because there's a power issue that people act from the need to control. And so this is very, very powerful, and can be power imbalance. But you want to, you rediscover power and rediscover structures of power. You're basically breaking down old structures, okay? Of both internally and externally. And this is, yes, very, very, very powerful. It is from a person that brings in the trine of the sex. It can be the same person, okay? But the trine of the sextile, that you're going to get for the resources to withstand for the structural changes. What you must understand, if the change is going to take place, it is a transit. You may not do the change with the person, but even when you get away from the person, it's not about the person, it's about the structural change that needs to happen. Okay, for example, my parents, they lived in one house. The family lived in one house. Then they divorced because they didn't want to have World War at the house. Then I and my parent lived in one house. couldn't afford it, more than one house, for a very long time. And then it would take a lot of time until we find structure of two houses, where is separation. And this structure of two houses saved our connection. At first, there even had to be enough space between the houses for to save the connection structurally. And it took a decade after I had another place to be for the connection to be okay. Okay. And then when I had a good friend, we had one apartment, but it was separated into two units. So each had their own kitchen, their own bathroom, their own this, their own that. And we managed with that for a while until, yes, had to move to the next phases in our lives. But the thing is that the structure of our housing was affecting both my parent marriage, not only that, but also, and it persisted to the next generation. And it took a decade after I moved out to still have good connection. Okay? Very, very powerful, strong Saturn Pluto themes. And that is, yes, something that you would see with the hard aspects as well. It takes time. Now let's talk about the trine. Saturn trine Pluto. This is where, again, you're eager to make a change. There's something that works way more harmoniously than even the sextile. There's something you need to tap into. Okay? Again, it's a change from the core that you can tap into now. I have to admit, I haven't experienced the trine and the opposition, fortunately. Enough experiences for that. Well, the trine may be okay, but you know, the opposition. Actually, I have experienced the opposition. I will talk about this. For the trine, I don't know to tell you if it's an option to tap into it or you're going to feel it anyway. My assumption, because it's outer planet to inner planet, you're going to feel it anyway. Okay? And very much like the sextile, you're going to want to change. So you're going to desire the change, both of you. And this is way more flowy than even the sextile requires adjustment. But the trine is kind of like we blend, but not blend like the conjunction. We're so intimate and so close and so passionate. Even when it's Saturn, okay, that's just Pluto. Pluto be Pluto. But with the trine, we blend more harmoniously. This is still a very heavy change from the core, okay? Always there will be an aspect that triggers that. So, in both of your charts. Then we have the opposition, and opposition Saturn, opposition Pluto. Okay, this is where you have Pluto. It's crunched up and you know, kind of like keeps to itself, and then comes Saturn that pokes at it from 12 o'clock. Hey, you need to change this thing. And where you see it in the Pluto is that Pluto might not even see Saturn standing right in front of it at first. And Pluto will definitely not see the power it has at first. Maybe after the Pluto square, yes. But what for sure will happen is that there is tremendous drawing in, or magnetism, I think is more correct than attraction here with this one, where Saturn Saturn has a karma to pose for you, but its way of seeing karma is opposite to your way of being, and also you are evolving to where Saturn is at. Evolutionarily, Pluto is evolving to the point of the opposition of Pluto. So Saturn Pluto opposition synastry means that one, the Pluto person is evolving to the place where Saturn is at, and Saturn is like, it's time to evolve. Okay, it's time to evolve. Whereas Pluto is still stuck in the past. Okay, for example, I can think about a person I had this aspect with, and they're the Saturn, I'm the Pluto. They're a person that we're talking about going beyond people who are abused and abusive and this and that and that and that and that. And I was still in the place of that little child that was afraid of older person that was abusive. Um, and so that little child, let's remember for that little child. And then there is this, you know, karmic person is telling me what to do, what to take responsibility, what to this, what to that. It's like, who are you, Mister? What do you know about this? And so on and so forth. And then came a Pluto square, and in my Pluto square, I happened to pay attention that this person could be my very young brother, and in some cultures, son. Okay. Now, had I been the Saturn person, I would say, well, son, Sonny. But because I was the Pluto person, I was like, oh my God, I have been looking at him like I'm the little child and he's the big person. I was like, wait, it's the other way around. I'm the grown adult. Okay. And I recalculated of my entire way of communication. Like, oh my God, I wasn't seeing that I have for my Pluto opposing your Saturn. I wasn't seeing what? Saturn, his age. Fortunately, it was not romantic relationship, but I wasn't seeing his age. And I'm like, I'm still responding from the child that was abused and had no power. And I'm standing in front of a young man that is, okay, a different type of interaction. Whoa. I'm 40. Time to evolve. And that is a very big, okay, incarnation test, but it's not an incarnation test, just Saturn introduces time to the equation. Saturn introduces it's time to evolve. Hey, you're supposed to be over here. You're stuck over there, but you're supposed to be over here, and over here is exactly opposing of where you're stuck at. And Pluto can be like, oh my God, I'm supposed to be over here, but hey, wait, I didn't even get to have fully a childhood. You want me to be the grown adult? I don't think I can do it just yet. There's an evolution there, but it's an evolutionary path and not necessarily a one-time thing, okay? And I see the smiles for other evolutionary paths I have with other planets when I'm, okay, the personal planet, not Saturn. They're like, yes, it's an evolutionary path. It's not one time. Okay? And so, but this is true. This is true. This is why the opposition can be a very, very annoying for the Saturn person, because Saturn is like, hey, come over here. But Saturn is the grown adult. And Pluto might not even see for the age. Okay, and Saturn can feel like I'm talking to a person almost twice my age that is acting like they were a little baby. Okay, so very not good aspect for intimate and romantic relationships. Absolutely not business partnerships. and definitely not therapeutic. Okay? It is not a good aspect to harbor where Saturn is, at least for Saturn, is the younger person, but it's very likely for Saturn to be the younger person. It's Pluto time. Here, Pluto is the generational planet. And so this is where we kind of also want to, yes, think about the fact that Pluto just doesn't fully see Saturn because it's stuck up in its own traumas, and an awakening can actually cause Pluto or Saturn to kind of like slowly dissipate or completely change the structure of the connection, but also psychological. It really changes the psychological structure, okay, of the way you deal with, because what is required from Pluto in this here is to change the way to think about their power in the interaction. Okay, with a Saturn person, it's a test of their maturity in the sense that you see that the other person, yes, is not anywhere near evolved yet to the point where you are. They don't see it yet, and you keep poking at them. Okay, it's not that you keep poking at them, it's that you keep poking at them by just being you and maturing up. The way that you are maturing up, even if you're younger, is poking at the trauma of the Pluto person. But that can give the Pluto person a chance to evolve and see beyond their traumas. And so, as with any Saturn Pluto, age differences can be significant, or power relation differences. Okay, you could be from different places up, very high up the rank, and not at all, or age differences, power relation differences. There's always an issue of finding your power with Pluto, of discovering your power. Okay. For example, for the Pluto-Saturn situation that I described, this Saturn was conjunct in my Venus, and I developed basically teaching about the difference between Venus and Jupiter when it comes to healing from abuse, where Jupiter is about, here you have choice, or what I call point of interference, and Venus is about validation and the importance of validation in healing from trauma, which was my value to contribute to the Saturn person, because validating here is highly important for a person to begin to have a movement where they can alter and access a range of choices that was not available before, even psychologically, when there was no validation. Yet again, the importance of housing first and open dialogue. And so, and it's not just for women, okay? It's something that I also noticed. So, choice-focused therapy for sexual abuse is, for some people, maybe it can work, but I've seen a grown person that tried to kill themselves so many times just because of this, and that was not by mistake by their therapist, but it was intentional to assassinate them almost. But to still keep them alive because they owned the fund that gave money to these therapists, and they were thinking they're doing something good. And so the main abuse was that the therapy focused on choices rather than validation. And when they switched to open dialogue, that was the first time that they began to sleep, and suddenly they began doing other things. And that was the chiron maturation, chiron return, basically, and so on and so forth. Yes, I don't know the level of naive that they still are about like my therapist, but the last time I tried to poke at the ability or chance for them to see or understand, it nearly ended with my assassination, so I stopped trying. For obvious reasons. Okay, I stopped trying. Are there patients that are still suffering because of this? Of course, but I tend to it on a larger teaching level, because it's not just my therapist, but it's an entire system of expandable children to use by basically enslaving authorities rather than humanity, in favor of humanity, and so on. There we are done with the Pluto-Saturn aspect. Then you ask me about the conjunction. Well, conjunction, I have to admit, I don't know too much to tell you about this. It can be a situation where you have to either be Saturnian or be Plutonian, and you need to kind of sacrifice a little between the two. Okay. I don't really know this. I have to be honest here. This is one of the most important aspects that you will have in life, and you will all have it in life in some way, whether by transit or by synastries that accompany to that transit. I can tell you, you can look at the transits in your life and see what's perfecting, because when something enters a sign, you already begin the procedure. Let's say Saturn return begins when Saturn enters the sign of your Saturn at birth. And same with Pluto, okay, even though it's an outer planet. And so when Pluto ingressed into Aquarius, I met my Corvan out for the season, and that is very likely to bloom towards like the next decade, where I'm supposed to have my Pluto square Saturn par excellence in transit, and hopefully I will have way more harmonious aspects of Saturn by then, which is essential. Okay. Now, the same thing I said about bringing in the trine and the sextile when you have the hard aspects is relevant to all outer planets to inner planets. So also the Pluto soul I did when I did that. I said bring in the place where you have the trine or the sextile, because you need to deal with that energy, but you want to do it in a way that's more harmonious. And this is why you need to look at both synastries and composite. And so if before, let's say, your Pluto square, kind of like your 40s, then you build up to those Plutonian themes. If outer planets in general are connected to your inner planets in any way, shape, or form, then you must understand that this is about learning to deal with that. And so I recommend you to start a relationship before your 40s, and be in relationships, but be very flexible about the commitment style, the contracts, okay, especially financial contracts that you make for those who don't have yet the maturity to know even enough of what you need to know about those things. Me learning about expandable children at around my Pluto square, I don't know, like I don't have anything smart to say about this, but I can definitely say that when outer planets connect with your personal planet, real relationship, you're going to deal with more than just yourself. There's a lot of beauty in it. To feel your relation, to learn about the world, and to doing for the world people. And this is, as you can see, if I talk about like nuclear today, that was 2016, 17, Oh, that's how I learned about your father. Oh, and so that is but also comfort. All of our life. Um, and those things are heavily heavily intense. Um, and it's not going to come into fruition. So then it's likely that you have generational gap that is big and or rank gap. Okay, so it's a big ranking in society, and at the same time it has a gap, it has a big financial gap, and those things can transform, and it's very likely meant to transform in some way. For those of you who are cancer and Leo ascendant, you have Saturn ruling the seventh house, so that plays out as well. Okay, this means that Pluto is transiting to the seventh house in Cancer and Leo ascendant is about to transform the seventh house into Cancer ascendant, what is entering the eighth house. Okay, which means it's not over yet. And your Gemini ascendant Pluto finishing up, is now finishing up with your eighth house. So there's still things to wrap up before the final like continuation, and those things can be surprising. So you like anything anywhere, like really until Pluto has done its deed with your seventh, it's not done yet. Okay, and that is so important to remember. Okay, that is so important to remember. um, Dealing with power relations in relationships and deep relationships, and your seventh house, eighth house is a big deal. And you also want to look at your Navamsha or D9 chart. I would look at it a tropical perspective as well. For me, that would mean I have Leo ascendant tropical. That means Pluto is entering my seventh house right now. So in my Pluto square, okay. So that is that's a big deal. And anyway, anything Pluto Neptune, you're going to have a huge step around your 40s, where which I'm now at, where the perspective shifts tremendously. So if it's ruling your seventh house, if it's going through your seventh house, even if you are way above 40, the very fact, if you are of one of these ascendants, okay, there's Cancer and Leo mainly, but to some degree also Gemini for the until like November. This means that even if you're above 40, or well above 40, it means that things are transforming very deeply just by the merit of transit in your life. Any structure that is transforming, because Saturn rules your relationships. Saturn also rules endings and beginnings and so on, and the karma of things. It has 7-year cycle. So this is where the touch of Saturn Pluto can have implications upon your intimate relations, and especially wealth associated with it or politics associated with it. I know there are a lot of, if COVID affected a lot of couples, and I'm half Dutch, I don't forget the unvaccinated sperm signs. Like, that's such a Dutchy move to do. So just like I don't forget the unvaccinated sperm signs with male holding an unvaccinated sperm, then right now we have a lot of things, a lot of politics that are affecting a lot of couples, okay, with a religious revolution and so on. And I had a 10 years friendship that for religious reasons kind of had to grow apart, so okay. Um, but those religious revolutions and those politic issues and so many things, a lot of them are kind of like, the masquerade and the intentional division, but people that don't know that, they still fight over this. And so they genuinely lose trust of each other and lose closeness of each other, and things can be highly disputed, and that can affect gay power relations. New versions of power arise. Okay, so let's say we lived in a country that was, I don't know, most wanted passport. Now they want to do changes in the country, and now they're like, okay, what's going to be the value of my passport? Some countries don't want this passport, somebody's this, somebody's that, and that can change also for the intimate relations. It's one person holding big passports, another person holding tiny passport, and then there is power relation in their ability to escape somewhere, to live independently of the other. Those can be Pluto, Saturn. Saturn is exactly as the bureaucracy. Okay, Saturn is also the papers, it's also the interest, it's also the things to do with finances and yes, debt as well. So marrying into debt and all these things that for when economy is okay, you think like, okay, we'll go through this together. When economy not okay, it's like, okay, you've married into debt. And all the things that entails. So for Pluto, Saturn, important dates. Saturn has 7-year cycle, so 7, 14, 21, 28, and cycles. Okay, Saturn matures at 28, but again, it can be a bit earlier. If it enters the sign, it already makes preparation. And Saturn returns at 28 and matures at 35, 36. Okay, so those are the ages where you're gonna have significant Saturns. Okay, Pluto to your Saturn, that depends on where your Saturn, so you have to check. Okay, that you need a natal chart for. Pluto squares at 40. This is the big one, this is the big deal, this is what everybody is usually asking about and looking for information about, and this is where Pluto square Pluto, it's a big 40, your 40s usually, it's the, when people say midlife crisis, when they don't mean the sports car is Uranus. Okay, the sports car and big affairs is Uranus. Pluto is yes, that midlife crisis, that is actually a crisis, and I think I was just afraid of my own shadow right now, which was really fascinating and so on point for the topic of this conversation. So I had a police car, and then yes, it wanted to know if I'm okay. And I got to understand a couple of things. And now I was just looking back and afraid of my own shadow, which was fascinating. Yes. Anything more I have to say about the Pluto Saturn? Well, think of the themes of psychology, money, religion, structure, bureaucracy, ancestors. What is your view of karma, death, debt, but also big wealth? Okay, when you do transform, it's bringing wealth, and wealth. I remind you, it's not the imaginary numbers in the bank, because they are imaginary. They might yield you profit, they might yield you nothing. They can change the coin, you can be Elon Musk, they can change the currency at any time. And nothing promise you that they don't want to, okay, expand you just the way what you had to do to children and children had to do. And so it's another, okay, form of wealth. And this is the wealth that comes with those transformations. The Pluto Saturn, with all of its aspects, can and is intended essentially to bring you wealth. It's not intended to break you down, because it's not going to feel like that mostly. Even with these aspects, it's like you could be doing something and another person looking at you and they're crushed by the situation that you deal with, and you're like, well, I want change, then I put my money where my mouth is, I want change. And so that is yes, important, okay. And with anything Pluto Saturn that you do to each other consciously, this is where I say, yes, pardon the N-word, change is nigga. The person can do it to themselves, but the other person, okay, as you want to avoid purposefully being overbearing. That being said, with the hard aspects, you could be doing you, okay, like when I left that person on academia, then I had to purge my own self, and I was doing it publicly because it's outer planet, it's not going to be internal for long. It has to go out, and there was a year of silence that has to go out, with the 30 years of silence preceding that. You hear me talking now, but I wasn't before, and there was not even words to express. So the entire build-up was okay, and that was public, and that was not about the person, but that was very worrisome to an intelligence agent, which I had no idea. Okay, and everybody tries to silence me, and of course it sits on that they don't believe me, and then it sits on that you either me or you with me. Okay, it's like, okay, it's kind of like the sitting on the fence, and then he sits on there. Well, they're from the cult. It's like, am I like all of these people, and that's the meaning of the cult. That is all of these people. Okay. And then informations come to me, and juristic informations come to me. We're both like a powerhouse of intelligence. It's just that he's in the intelligence and I'm outside of the cult, but he doesn't believe that. Because I'm channeling everybody that was in the cult, like the energy that just came in. So, so that is okay. That he's never seen such an animal, and I haven't seen such an animal. And people tell me this is Bitcoinist, which I thought is security, work for security service. What is security service? This is the Mossad, ISIS. It's the okay. It's the that of the dadness, and I never ran into that before that intimately. So So yes, I guess that's true what they tell about these things, and it's global intelligence, mind you. I should have suspected when they were, showing me the inside of a hotel room in Russia for the game of Iran and I don't remember who, that they were not just doing their title job. Very likely they should have suspected that too. Because you don't always know when you're recruited, you don't always know. So that's another thing that can happen. Um, yes, keep in mind that with Saturn Pluto, that it's a part of your path. You don't have to do it with this person, but you need to understand what is going on so that you can proceed. And there is time to until you understand what's going on. Okay. So I think that sums it up. It's a video I wanted to do for a while. And yeah, this is pretty much uh, what's going on. And as for the part where you might just by being you be a catalyzer to somebody else's Pluto Saturn transformation, that thing just happens. Okay, don't avoid being you. You will anyway have to express yourself. Okay, when I spoke up, it was to stay alive, and eventually Flying Bombardier came out of that. Okay. It's very simple. It was a channeled satire that most of it was me, but it was informations that I was also receiving. And so gotta give the credit. And so this is something that you want to keep in mind. Okay, don't avoid expressing yourself. This is not the point. But do try to express yourself in kind of like your own means. Now there is a problem of shadow banning in social media, so this is making another crisis, because if you are expressing yourself in your own mean and it requires a public, okay, Pluto requires a wider range. Okay, so we'll either do it in other ways, in stunts and so on, which I began to do, which is good. But the other thing is that you're gonna pick up the public places that you have, and then that might step over one over the other. So one person, let's say, is more visible, then another person is going to be there, and it's like, well, if you would have to share the spotlight if you want me to not trigger you with all this content, because right now I cannot just say it on my social media, because yes, but then for some people they cannot say it because they are the psychologist, because they are the intelligence person, and there is something to do with expression that can be involved in that as well. And this is not always, but this is important to keep in mind. There's some sort of intricacy of structure that affects something. To heal Pluto, since it's so chakra related, you need to bring it to the heart and you need to express it. And it has to be impactful, it has to be powerful. The worst thing for Pluto is for someone to feel helpless. Both of you are going to experience helplessness at some range or point, and when one is experiencing helplessness, what the other is also, and sometimes it's generally the structure that puts you in a situation where for one to express itself, it has to go through other means. For example, when I wrote, let's say, on Facebook, that was the means I have, but the other person didn't have this means, so they would essentially channel through me so that I can write a satire, and then they had their outlet through me. Okay, but then they had to be in contact with the person that walked away from them, and it was and for a reason. Okay, it wasn't such a flowy energy to begin with, and so I became kind of like the means or the outlet for what they needed to express, and that came out through a satire to something created in a way together, but when apart. Okay, we're not communicating. It was just energy and telepathy. Um, so that was very powerful, but it's like, okay, that's what needed to come out there. And so another form which that can take is where there one person, let's say, shadow band, and the other person is having exposure. And so you have an exposure, now you have to deal with the people that didn't have exposure. And so for these people, you have to see this person, and they cannot step away from you and just do their own thing, because they don't have the power that you have. And you might not acknowledge this power, especially if you're being told that nobody is blocked, nobody's shadow banned, you can do your own thing. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Well, I'm outside the book. It's important for me to be outside the code for what I do. That means I'm shadow banned, and so on and so forth. And that can create for an interaction that is disturbing because of the power relations along the structure, and it is just that structure that needs to be changed. Okay, I'll give you one example. When I see, okay, there's on X right now, it's a platform that was founded after Elon Musk basically had treatment, gender affirming treatments for one of his children, and he saw that this has irreversible effects that he didn't understand wholly. In addition, he had problems with the feminine because he grew up in a God, say. It's not personal with him, it's just all across the board, unfortunately. And then he bought Twitter. Okay, and then he brought in all the people that were cancelled, okay, like Jordan Peterson, but even Andrew Tate and Donald Trump and right-wing leaders and so on and so forth. And then some of these people were silenced and banned for decades, and suddenly get an outlet, and so they're like, I love X, just praising X president. I'm like, I've been doing content creation for a decade, and if you don't put yourself on more platform than X, maybe you need to create yourself another platform, then they can shadow ban you just as much as they shadow ban other people. And funnily enough, that person was supposed to promote a centralized economic system, okay? And this is where the solution for the visibility issue would be in investing in decentralized social media platforms where they don't get silenced, right? But then on the other hand, if you're in a disadvantaged position because people have a certain prejudice over who you are and what you have to say, mind you, no red or blue pill have any different funding, so they don't really have a difference. But but it's also fair that their opinions are not one better than the other. Okay, it's important to understand. Okay, so to hear the voices in the discourse, Allah Habermas. So there is a situation where you see it structurally that the solution to the problem that you don't even understand that you have, or you understand that you have, is like, what can I do about this, is actually decentralization, while you are coming here to promote something centralized, because that's what you're extorted to do since basically childbirth, that you are the child. And so, okay, more than half a century ago. And so this is, okay, this is exactly what the kind of intricate situations that you would see with Pluto Saturn, okay? The power of structure, power in the face of the structure, changing powers in the face of the structure, the need to decentralize a certain structure with the challenges that arise along, okay? And then now we'll end up with a scene from the movie Working Girl, and this is where the leading actress was basically the secretary, and then she didn't manage to get up, she was plagiarized and so on. Then she decided that in order to not have her ideas stolen, she has to steal an identity, and she pretended to be her boss and began to promote a business deal, a merging, an acquisition, and so she found a partner that happened to be before they were the ex-boyfriend of her boss, so she stole also not identity but also the lover, but for her it was business partner, and so she promotes this deal, and everything gets smooth, and then her boss returns from vacation, um, and they meet at the elevator. Okay, she shows how the idea was her, because she has all the papers, so she shows how she reached this idea and connected all the dots, which a boss cannot do because they stole the idea. And this is how you do in business, let alone for people who have been there. So you want to make sure you have the linkage to this is how I found, this is how I got, this is how this is how that, so you can trace back to that. Then she talks to the person that was in charge of the acquisition, the person that they were doing the deal with, and she tells them a very important sentence. She said, well, when you're climbing up the pyramid, you can bend the rules plenty once you're up there, but to get there, you need to bend the rules. Nobody lets you bend the rules when you're not there, and yet to get there, you have to bend the rules. So she had to steal an identity. Okay. And so, and just a couple of days ago, I was thinking, if I go to people, let's say, a grocery store, and I say, hi, nice to meet you, I'm a social engineer, would they let me have food? What would that entail? What would that be? Okay. How would that change how am I treated when I'm a citizen? Okay. So, and I can tell you when I was actually, and here is a surprising story, because I said I'm going to end with that, and of course I have to acknowledge the fact that the structure doesn't work always that way. When I was in between houses, I was in Netherlands, I was with my Israeli passport, emergency passport, and because of COVID this was allowed. And then I was waiting a month for my Dutch one to arrive, which has arrived, but I was hosted on the basis of not Dutch person, which is why I traveled, because I have rights as Dutch person, but as a foreigner. And as foreigner, I had shelter. Because I had Dutch passport, they didn't give housing so easily, and then they closed the shelter. But the thing is that as outsider, which is what Geert Wilders is talking about, and he's unfortunately correct, 100%. I could have shelter, I could have food, and it's the best conditions in Europe. People from all over Europe would come to Netherlands for the winter shelters, and they're still problematic to the core, but still the best that in the continent is true. And so it's actually my lack of Dutch passport upon arrival that ensured that I will have shelter. And then when the Dutch passport arrived, I was like, here it is, there is a round of applause, there is the passport, okay, goodbye, shelter is gesloten. And so, and this is what is intentional structural, and this is where I disagree with Wilders, this is intentional structurally, so the Dutch people will get mad, so that they will require to remove all the refugees and remove everybody's no Dutch from Netherlands, because they could give rights on individual basis, give public housing to Dutchies is one thing, and then assistance in housing for refugees or other people on on other bases, okay, a refugee basis on individual basis is important because this is the right to exit violence, and we wouldn't have this problem because anyway the houses are taken by the human trafficking. And and if we tended to that, then there would be enough housing. Not when they make world wars, for when we expose the cold, 1996, and then so on. But this is where it was surprising, because it was actually my lack of papers that gave me precedence over people that had all the papers who still not housed there. And I talk about in another episode how astrologically it was actually less safe for me to be housed there. So the shelter situation was safer for me there, but housing would not be as safe as it could be in other places. So everything was for the best, but this is also something that can happen with the Saturn Pluto, and that was when Saturn was squaring my Pluto, and I got out of a system that was no longer supportive of me mentally, and realized that I had to deal with something deep, which was essentially, I'm not cuckoo, I was just homeless in Israel if I hadn't been cuckoo. Because otherwise I would have to deal with the C factor in science, which is corruption. And if I had a soldier for every time they found a cure for cancer and then budget stopped, then I would have enough soldiers perhaps to protect the researchers and doctors that would be able to provide cure for cancer. We would literally not have cancer. It's about care. So, for more revelations, watch my YouTube channel, subscribe, and do whatever. I'll see you in another video. Bye-bye.